Hello again. Here we are to continue our discussion of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And today we're going to put all three together into web components. So what are web components? Well, web components are a new technology. They're native to the browser, so they're just like JavaScript, HTML, and CSS and web components, right? They're just built in. You can use them in any browser. They are still pretty new, so they don't do everything that everybody would like them to do yet, but they are getting better. Web components are currently in use by a lot of companies, so big companies like Facebook and Salesforce and Google and GitHub all use web components. So why use a web component? Well, a web component is native to the browser. So that means you don't have to have a library to use a web component. Okay? And what that means is that if you have a large company and you have different teams working on different projects, right, and different products within your company, each team might choose a different technology. Like they might, one team might use Angular, another team might use React, and then all of a sudden those two code bases are not compatible, even though the two products are fine on their own, right? With a web component, though, a team could write one component and it could be used in an Angular environment or a React environment. Okay, so web components are native, so they're kind of, portable in a way, like they can be used in any environment. Okay, so what exactly is a component, right? Let's talk about that for a minute. So, in your household environment, a component is a piece of something. So, you might have a chair and your chair is made up of a frame, a cushion, and wheels, and those are each separate parts. So your chair might have 3 or 4 or 5 wheels on it, right? And, you could take any one of those wheels off and replace it with another wheel that matches, right? Or you could take those wheels off and put them underneath a table and you'd be able to roll your table around, right? The same thing with like light switches in your house. Like if a light switch breaks, you can replace it with another light switch. Or if you need, if you add a new room or add a new, something else in your house and you need to add a light switch, you can just take another light switch and plug it in and it works, right? On a web page, it's a similar situation. You have a web page and it's made up of blocks of text and buttons and nav bars and images, and you can mix and match those things. And if you need another image, you can add another image tag, and that adds an image to your page. Okay, or if you need to add a new web page, you can just use the nav bar again, and you have that component on that page. Web components allow us to create things like that. Okay. Componentize our HTML, which actually is the way that it works already. Let's take a look at some of the tags that already exist. So these tags right here are, the input tag, but you'll notice I've given each one a different type attribute, okay? And so I actually have all this here in my my editor, my code editor, and I'm going to open this up in the browser here, right? So you can see here I've got this opened up in my browser, and you can see that my text input looks like this, hello world, and then hello world, hello world, there we go, right? And then my checkbox looks like that, right? So this is the checkbox. And then the range slider looks like this, right? So that's a range input. And then the color input looks different again, right? Let's look at that, right? Totally different. So how did that work? Like we just created one tag, but somehow the browser turned it into new things, right? So a core feature of web components is that they all have a shadow DOM. So or they don't necessarily have to have this, but most of the time they're going to have it, right? If I open up the form element here, and I'm in the inspector right now, and I'm in Safari, and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure how to turn this on. I kind of guess that it's on by default in Safari because I can't find a checkbox for this anywhere. I'll show you how to turn it on in Chrome. But you'll see here, like if I click on this first element and I open it up, you can see it has this thing that says shadow content. right? So this is a DOM element that's a div with content editable plain text, right? That's what makes this editable, right? Okay. And then if I look at the checkbox right here, if I open that up, it says content, shadow content, and it doesn't let me open this up. So there's something hidden in there that we can't get to. And then the range slider is interesting. If we open this up, you can see it's got a div that surrounds the whole thing. And if I open that up, it's got another div that I think this one is the bar. And then if I open this one up, there's another div inside. And this one is that little circle that you drag around. So this circle right here. Okay, so somehow when we set the type attribute here and the browser generated these things, it also generated some extra markup. And you'll notice that if I added some style rules here and I said style all divs to have a border, it actually wouldn't affect these divs. Okay, so these divs in the shadow DOM are separate from the regular DOM. So when you style the regular DOM, it does not affect the things that are in the shadow, though it will affect the parent element. Okay? And again, the color picker is the same way. So if I open this up, it says shadow content, and when I open that up, I get a div. That's that little swatch there. And then when I click on this, I have another div inside. And if I click and open this up, I can get this color picker, right? Okay. Let's take a look at this in Chrome for a moment. So if you're using Chrome, I have the same page here open in Chrome. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go to the little gear right here. Open up the inspector first. So, right click and choose inspect, and then click on the gear right here. And this will take you to settings. And you want to go to elements. So I'm going to scroll down here until I get to elements right here. And then there's a checkbox that says show user agent shadow DOM. Okay, so when you've turned this on, what will happen is you will see inside elements that have a shadow DOM, you'll see a little triangle and you'll be able to open it up and you'll see shadow root user agent, right? And then underneath that, you'll see all the extra markup, okay? And the markup will be slightly different between Safari and Chrome, but that's okay. The browser can just implement those things the way that it wants to, right? So what does that have to do with us, right? Well, let's talk about this for a minute, right? Let's imagine that you wanted to create a carousel, and if you were in Bootstrap, you were using Bootstrap, you would create the carousel like this. So you would make a div to surround your carousel, and then you'd make an inner div that is this is like a group of elements that are going to slide left and right. And then inside this inner div, you'd make a series of divs that are each of the slides in your carousel, right? And along the way, you'd also have to mark these things up. So you'd have to say class name, class name active, class name item, and you'd have to put some more stuff on here. Like this guy has to be class carousel inner. This has to be have an ID. It has to have class carousel and slide, and then it has to have this data bootstrap ride carousel. So it has to have all this, right? Let's imagine we wanted to create a custom tag, right? That was called, framework slides, right? And I wanted to set the time between each slide to 5,000 milliseconds. And then each of these image tags was going to be one slide in my carousel. So using a custom web component, I could do this, right? Because my custom web component right here would be a custom tag that I create. So in a nutshell, web components are custom tags. Like you create new, and I said tag and element are the same thing, but really element is kind of the more accurate word. So I should say web components are custom elements that you define. So you give them a tag name, you get to make up the tag name, and then that tag's going to do something, and you get to determine what it does. You write JavaScript for that, and you can also write CSS styles for it too, right? And then all this extra markup that we got, so for example, like carousel inner, or if we needed a div to surround each image that we used, right? those extra tags would all be hidden in the shadow DOM. Okay, so also this tells us that not only does the web components allow us to define custom tags, those tags can also work with their child elements. Okay, so they can also incorporate these child elements into the tag, and that makes them very flexible, right? So anyway, so that's like a quick introduction to the shadow DOM. I have some reading here. So it says getting started with web components. So you can read the chapters here on javascript.info about web components, custom elements, and the shadow DOM to follow up what we just discussed there. And then what we're going to do later is we're going to make our own custom element down below. Okay, so let me do that in another video. And for right now, why don't you go ahead and read through this information here and take a look at that. And if you want, you can read this optional article here, which is a blog post by GitHub talking about how they use web components on the GitHub site. Okay, so again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.